My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We are on the section of theory. We left off on page 64 towards the bottom paragraph, and it begins with this. Here it is distinctly pronounced what we mean. The close correlation of the spiritual with the material, and the fact of a direct transition of emotions into material, perceivable realities of the so-called outer world. But this is the foundation of all magic. Again, our spiritual being, our soul, what's inside of us, that spirit that animates us, living in the material body. We are going to harness our emotions. We've talked about this so many times. We don't just spill our emotions through, self-harm. We don't dilute our emotions with drugs, alcohol, and all sorts of other unhealthy addictions. Instead, we harness those emotions. We use them as fuel to make change to our material world. In those emotions, they are used, again, the material, perceivable realities of the so-called outer world. Okay. So again, that's more esoteric. He's talking a little bit more about how the material world, the outer world that we know, the physical world, is still esoteric and occultic in a lot of ways. He's describing it as perceivable. We perceive these things as whole and real. They are. We have to understand that in order to move forward with life, right? We have to have some concrete understanding. But again, we harness those emotions to make changes in the real world, our real reality, our outer world. We have described our I center. Okay, so again, our I center, our ego, our consciousness, our soul, our spirit. The author here, right, Dr. Ernst Schertl, when he says I center, what does that sound like? Does that remind you of anything? Maybe the way that Robert Monroe would describe our I center, our spirit, our consciousness, same type of wording. Again, the men that we are working with, the authors of the books that we're reading from throughout the Mind War podcast, they all have, it's like they're all coming to the same beliefs, the same truth, the same realities. And in some ways, they're speaking the same language. They may have come to it in different paths, but it's all converged on this one truth of magic. The same way that we've done here in the Mind War. Throughout my practice of magic, throughout my art project here, you're seeing the path, because that's what I'm trying to do here with the Mind War podcast, is I'm trying to show you the progression, the path that I took to learn magic and to make these major transformations in my life, so you can follow that same path in a way, right? Again, you don't have to do everything that I do, but maybe I'm just throwing a few breadcrumbs out there for you to help you get further along in your path and in your journey. We have described our eye center, our center of consciousness, as a point within the cosmic force net. This point represents a place of crossing, a whirl center of cosmic force lines, and is connected with the whole cosmos like a knot in a fishnet with the net itself. We have defined our soul, and in addition our body, as layers of the force net, which are lying around the knot and are, as surrounding meshes, particularly close and directly because of the inner feeling or organ feeling intertwined with it. The layers of the cosmic dynamic, which are further away, are only indirectly accessible by use of our body sphere. So again, our soul, our body, our consciousness, all of these things are different layers of our reality. Again, a lot like our chakras. We think of our lowest chakra coming from our groin area, the one that's represented by red. That is the lowest form of consciousness, right? Our animal consciousness, okay, where we are simply responding to our five physical senses. Are we hungry? Are we tired? Are we, feeling the need to procreate? Are we in pain? Whatever these senses are, we're living based off of those. And as we move up and as we refill our chakras through our practice, the hope is that it clears our mind enough to where we move out of that animal layer of living and we move up towards that crown chakra where we're starting to think more spiritually, metaphysically, things like that, right? And again, as the author is trying to describe here, all of what we do, everything that makes up our spirit, everything that makes up our soul, along with everything that makes up our physical body and the material world around us, it's all held together again with that cosmic dynamic force. There is something out there, the force, right? It's holding all of this together. It's giving us purpose. It's animating all of us in our lives, right? Well, let's go on here. There was until now no talk of things in the general sense, since forces are not things, but are above material, paracosmical, roots of the consciousness phenomenon, which in some circumstances gain thing character. How do we now arrive at the so-called observation of things, which in the energetic sense do not even exist? Again, kind of that esoteric, maybe over our heads, flies over our head a little bit right now in what we're doing, because again, it's really what we're trying to do here is self-help. We're trying to move up that ladder of chakras, right? We're trying to come out of our animism if we need to. Of course, we can always go back and visit it when it's necessary. But we want to be able to, again, elevate ourselves and our thinking. So we have to be careful when we look at stuff like this. Again, this esoteric idea of things aren't even real. They're all just kind of our perception. It's just our imagination kind of seeing the things and feeling them all around us. Again, very esoteric. Don't get lost in that, okay? But enjoy it. We have to imagine our body as a seismograph of the cosmic dynamic, shifting of energy within the cosmic force net effectuate by indirect way via our body a perception on the table of our consciousness, just as shaking of the earth causes by indirect way via the seismograph a curve on a strip of paper. This curve is the result of joint action of the shaking of the earth together with the individual parts of the seismograph. If, for example, there is red ink in the pen, then the curve will be red. If there is black ink in it, then the curve will be black. Depending on the construction of the machine, the curve will be high and narrow or low and wide, even though the shaking of the earth was neither red nor black nor narrow or wide. Okay. A seismograph, again, if there is an earthquake, it's the machine that has the paper. It's kind of just spooling across, and there's a little ink pen connected to the end of a very sensitive, little needle, basically, and it just flips back and forth as the earthquake is happening. Okay. In what the author here is saying, that the seismograph machine itself, no matter how it is constructed, no matter how it's set up, no matter how it's configured, right? A red pen, a black pen, blue, green, whatever color, it could be set up very loosely where the waves on the paper are huge, or it could be very tight where the seismographic waves are very small and narrow. It doesn't matter, because ultimately the earthquake itself is just one thing. Okay? How we perceive it through the seismograph is different. I hope that helps understand what we're talking about here a little bit. And if anything, it's a way to describe putting yourself in other people's shoes and understanding that we all may perceive things differently. We all were in the earthquake, but we all felt it in different ways. The same applies to our observations. They are the result of the co-action between cosmic shifting of energy and the force complex of our body. But they are as little equal to the shifting of energy as an earthquake is to the red or black curve. Again, how do we describe this? If you are out there, right, say we have two separate groups of people that are converging together. One group is a quiet group, minding their own business, maybe having dinner somewhere, everything's cool. But then a group of people come in who maybe just came from an event where there was a lot of drinking. It was very rowdy. It was very high level, high energy. And now that group comes into the same restaurant, and now they're starting to be rowdy and all sorts of things, right? The restaurant is still the same. Nothing changed. But now there is this convergence. People are perceiving this event of maybe trying to sit down and have a meal. It's different now. Each side is perceiving it differently. And the energies are changing each other's event, right? That crazy crowd, when they come in, now they're disturbing the people that are being quiet. The people that were acting crazy, they now see the people that are quiet as a target, as a victim to go harass, right? These are these changes in energy, pushing our energies back and forth on each other. We have to be very careful about that. It is in the nature of every perception, and consequently of every observation, that it is standing before us, that is to say, projected. Our consciousness automatically puts the mental image before us and creates therewith an outer world or environment. So perceptions are always something which originated in the co-action between the cosmic and our inner bodily energies, but are never the copy image of a thing. Things only exist at our level of consciousness, and they are drawn upon this level by the whole universe on its way through our body, which itself is just a part of the universe. Again, we are all connected. Everything is connected with this cosmic dynamic force. We all share it. No matter what group you're in, no matter your race, your religion, ethnicity, age, any of those type of things, wherever you are on the world, whenever you were in the world, all of it, everything from history all through the future, it's all connected through that cosmic dynamic force. We all share that together, and that's beautiful. Hold on to that and remember it as you go throughout your life. And one other thing that we have to be careful of and be very conscious of as we live through our life. We talked about this a little bit in the Gateway Experience series, this idea of the Akashic records, or basically when we die, this theory that we then get access to everything that has ever occurred throughout history, okay? And we can go back and review those things, right? So we often hear that when people die, you have a life review. So not only are you going to review your own life, but you are going to also be able to live in the shoes of everyone else and live through their life. And I don't know if it's going to be something like sitting down and watching a movie, or if once we are returned to that cloud of consciousness, our little drop of spirit that comes from the absolute, comes from the cloud, right? Once it evaporates back up into the cloud, is, when we review all of history and kind of live through everyone's shoes, is it like watching a movie, or is it just this instant flood of here's everything? Now you know it all. You've experienced the same thing everyone else did. The reason that we have to be careful about that is because, again, if you get access to these records, if we get access to these records after we pass away, if you are the perpetrator of a crime in your life, if you hurt someone in your real life, in the real reality that we're living now, when you die, you are also going to experience what it was to be the victim of your crime. Does that make sense? That's why not only do we not do these things in our current life because we know morality. Morality is built into us from when we were born. We don't do these negative things, and we don't hurt other people for a countless myriad of reasons here in reality, right? One, because it's nasty, and who wants to hurt others? It doesn't make sense. But also that feeling of shame and guilt and all of those things that come with it. Once you do hurt someone, that doesn't make any sense to live with that. That's this idea of hell on earth. And then if, as we've talked about before, when you pass away, you get access to these Akashic records, well, that's now hell in the afterlife. Because now you have to relive the pain that you forced upon others. Be very careful what we do in this life. Again, whether there's an afterlife or not doesn't actually matter. You don't do these things in our real life, any of these negative things that hurt others, you don't do them in your real life because you're going to pay the consequence in this life. It's hell on earth. When you have to live with the shame and the guilt and all that of hurting others, it doesn't make sense. So we stay away from those things. There exists no consciousness without body, just as no earthquake curve can exist without a seismograph. Every center of consciousness creates a specific individual environment or thing world, just as every seismograph draws its own curve. We only believe that there exists just one objective thing world. Our cultural analysis gave us the proof that different peoples envision totally different worlds, which are in themselves completely reasonable, but are nonetheless inconsistent with one another. Now, with science the way that we have it today, our idea of, totally different worlds maybe is changing, right? Right now on the earth, sure, there are still, tribes out in the jungle that maybe have never really had contact with modern man, and they see the world very differently than somebody who lives in a big city. Sure, that's fine. But with science, we're still starting to break down the world around us. And so we have a more unified version of what reality is, of what makes up the world and how it all works, and that's good. The problem that we run into, again, the societal, cultural, and religious wet blankets. We are all in the same world. We all understand at a basic level the science that makes the world turn, but then upon that, this blanket of religion is cast. This blanket of your society or your culture is thrown over it. And now that acts as a division. So where people, again, we're all living in the same world, but now we start to perceive it differently. And that's unfortunate. That's what we want to try to move away from. We want to try to take those wet blankets off and move more towards that unified, universal vision of what the world is and what life is. So we don't have to be divided by these other more menial fairy tales, whether it's laws written on the book, whatever it is that divides us, right? We can move past those. Let's see. The idea of a multitude of worlds thereby gains total confirmation. Paul Mongreux, looks like an author, spoke about this, and he says this: there need not be only the one continuum of world conditions wherein we are interwoven. In addition to this, there are any number of other worlds thinkable, with variable content, displayed on timelines, on which points of presence play their game. That means a pluralit de mondes, which we have to accept. A plurality of ideas, maybe, especially because we are not able to assure ourselves of it by experience, but are always depending on our one timeline. Again, history has been occurring for such a long time. People have lived in the exact same world that we live in today, on the same earth, but they lived in it in very different ways. And again, that's where this perception of what life is. We're all perceiving it differently, slightly differently at the very least, right? So in this next paragraph, again, this book here, Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. Supposedly, there was a historian who went through Adolf Hitler's library and found that his copy of the book Magic History Theory Practice that was given to him by Dr. Ernst Schertl, that copy was very well read and had a lot of annotations in the margins, basically where Hitler would highlight different parts of this book that he found, exceptional, right? And so this next paragraph is one of those highlighted ones, and it goes with this here. It says, now the objection is suggested that in this way, every differentiation between fantastical perceptions or imaginations and objective observations might be blurred. but there is indeed no fundamental difference between them. Imagination and observation are to the same extent products of the cosmic dynamic and of inner bodily forces, and as such are real, provided that the notion of reality still has any meaning at all. Again, the perception between imagination and reality are different. Here's another example. If you come across a dog, okay, so upstairs right now, Leo, my best buddy, my Boston Terrier, he's upstairs sleeping, right? Cute, tiny little guy. Nobody's really going to be afraid of him. Even if you're afraid of dogs, he's so little, there isn't much to be afraid of, right? Now, we also have Douglas, right? Arcane Corso, 130 pound. Just monster of a dog. Cute, friendly, happy. He's so happy to see me every time I come over and we go outside and play, and he, I chase him around the yard and he drags me all over the place, right? Big dog. I know that Douglas is a sweet dog and that he loves me and that he's gentle, right? But if you're someone who is afraid of dogs because of something that has occurred in your lifetime, maybe you were bit by a dog or whatever, right? You're going to see Douglas and be afraid of him. This person would be afraid of Douglas because he's such a big, giant dog. He's barking a lot, all that type of stuff. Again, it's about perception, not necessarily the reality. The reality is that Douglas is a great, gentle, sweet dog. But if because of your observable past, the past that you lived through, if you've had trauma that has been caused by the canines in your life, then of course Douglas is going to scare you. Okay? Again, that difference. You have to put yourself in other people's shoes. We have to also remember that as we go through our life. If we try to make changes to our culture, our society, religions, whatever it may be, we have to not just bulldoze everything. We have to also be gentle and understanding and caring and have concern for everyone else's perception. Now, that doesn't mean that we allow other people's perceptions of reality stop us from moving forward with our goals, right? Ultimately, what it may mean is helping these people come back from the edge. Their version of reality may be they're standing on the edge of a building and they're constantly in fear and they're constantly feel like they're falling off and about to crash out, right? We need to walk them back and say, no, there's some safety here. I understand that you've been living in a kind of, survival mode, but we're going to back you away from that. You're good. You're good to go now, and we can help you perceive the world in a different way. In practice, we nevertheless differentiate between imagination and observation is because of the fact that the imagination is to a stronger degree caused by inner bodily compression of cosmic energy. Observation, on the other hand, is caused more by the influence of layers of the cosmic force net, which are further away. Okay. One of the things that I've dealt with, you've dealt with, and there's probably other people in your life that have dealt with this too. Okay, so if you have someone in your life that you're close with, and they are someone who is attuned to having a lot of negative thoughts, right? Again, maybe they're in survival mode. And one of the, when you're in survival mode, you're constantly looking for the danger. Where's the danger going to come from next, right? So in your mind, you're constantly creating these scenarios of danger, these negative scenarios in your mind about what could happen because you want to prepare yourself to flee or, again, survive. So you play out these negative ideas in your head in order to war game them. Now what happens is people who are in this survival mode, who are coming out of traumatic experiences or traumatic, events or whatever, they're constantly going to be thinking about this negative stuff. Now, often it's for physical survival, things like that. But once they get comfortable, they may still have those same type of thoughts, but put it towards things like your relationship and just basic day-to-day living and going and doing normal, appointments or whatever you have to do. They're still in that survival mode. And often what happens is that some of the people who are closest to us in our lives, who are in survival mode, no matter how much you help them, no matter how kind and gentle and soft you are to them, they still create this negative version of you in their mind because they are afraid that someday you're going to turn on them, right? That's in that survival mode. And as the person who's trying to do the helping, you may get attacked by these people that you love, and you're putting all this, this help towards, and you're putting your love towards them. You may get attacked by them. But if you don't respond negatively, and if you don't respond in a way where you're pushing them away, you put your shield up, you take their arrows and their sword swipes and all that stuff. You understand that you're protected. You understand that you're not the person that they are perceiving you to be. Then slowly that starts to melt away in this other person, right? They're going to slowly start to understand you're not the bad person that I see in my mind, right? No matter what side of that coin you're on, be patient, be gentle with each other, right? Again, that's one of those ideas of your imagination versus your reality. I think, as teenagers, if you are a teenager living in a good household with parents who love you, you may still rebel against them because you perceive them to be holding you down from going to do the things that you want to do, right? But as a teenager, a lot of the things that you want to do are going to be destructive and dangerous, and you have to be careful. But that doesn't mean that your parents, right, are negative or bad or anything like that. They're just looking out for you. But again, when you're in that mindset, it almost doesn't matter. You still look at them as the enemy, as somebody's holding you back, even though that's not true. These distinguishing features can be very important for daily life, but they do not play any role in relation to true or false, real or illusory. The notions of true and false are completely relative and depend on the overall meaning of our world of perception. Just as the meaning of an individual word always depends on the overall meaning of the whole sentence or even the whole book. Man, what is true and false in the world today is, in some ways, more difficult to find than ever, when it shouldn't be. We have more facts than we've ever had in all of human history available to us in our fingers, right on our fingertips. You look in the phone, boom, you're getting facts. The problem is that who is behind the fact, right? Who is presenting it to you, and what is their purpose for presenting their fact to you? Because often, again, as we've seen over this last, say, 5 to 10 years, really over the last few decades of my lifetime, one person's fact is another person's fiction, right? That's the world that I've seemed to live in. As a conspiracy theorist for over 20 years now, most of my adult life, I feel like I have lived in a world of fiction where I look out on everyone else's facts and I go, none of that seems real. None of that seems right. And it can be difficult because the purveyors of these fictions are often really good at gaslighting you and making you feel like you're incorrect. But don't let go of those feelings of, man, this just doesn't seem right. I've found that the simplest explanation is usually the real one. The simplest, easiest explanation for things is usually the correct one. Try to focus on that. And maybe we can go deeper in that in future episodes. Let's go on to the next paragraph. Again, some more kind of highlighted information here. For these next few paragraphs, it looks like, let's go on here. It says, none of our perceptions, whether imagination or observation, can be related to anything, since facts of consciousness do not originate in things, but are the stuff of possible things. So no perception can per se be described as true or wrong, as right or false, as real or illusory, since all of these notions always require an existing thing world beyond our perception. If a perception is true or wrong, is ultimately only a question of intensity. There are perceptions which read as far as the material thing intensity, and others which get stuck in a faint, elusive quality. Here we also have to quote C.L. Shylock, maybe another author here, and he goes on to say this: everything spiritual, if wrong, if right, if infected, like the bacilli, quickly overreaches the rhythm of the thought. Thus, thoughts have gained their great power over the masses. Ideas are infectious, and irrefutable tensions of consideration extracted from the fantasy of the individual. Concentrations of the mind into explosive, dynamite-like structures turn into that amalgamated flake, which originated from the step of a bird in the snow and finally becomes an avalanche. Again, we've talked about this a little bit. When you are working on your aristos, again, your aristos is your current situation that you're in, and then the scenario is, how do we perceive our current situation? Okay? We're all in a situation. Your age, your race, your gender, your location, your job, your family status, all of those things are your situation. But the scenario of your situation is really how you view it, how you deal with your situation, how you handle it. Are you constantly going into every day with a negative attitude? That's a bad scenario for your current situation. But with incremental, progressive changes, we change our scenario. Basically, we change our view of our life with small changes. That's all it takes. Again, like the footprints of a bird in the snow that becomes an avalanche. Small incremental changes to our scenario will eventually lead to a change in our situation and ultimately to the change of our aristos. These perceptions, which find the best breeding ground within a given world of consciousness and unfold the highest intensity, prevail and are then believed to be true. Even the enlightened European of today is living from imaginations in the amount of 3/4. The great cultures of the past are in general not thinkable without imaginative ideas. Sometimes what we find, especially with the masses, with culture, is that the most intense ideas become reality, whether they are true or not. It doesn't matter. if there is intensity behind them. If the intensity behind this idea grows because the masses continue to conglomerate and join into this idea, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. The idea keeps going. It keeps growing. We have to be very careful with that in our life, okay? And I may go into this more in the future, but here's kind of an example. I call this the third way psyop, okay? So with any great psyop, you have the mainstream narrative, which is often a lie. Then you have a conspiracy, which can often be the truth, even though we're told that's the lie. Okay? Or it could be vice versa. The mainstream theory is closer to the truth, and then the conspiracy is closer to the lie. Okay? But ultimately, neither of those, the mainstream theory or the conspiracy, are the truth. That's why it's the third way psyop, and that's what we are trying to observe. The mainstream narrative, a lie. The conspiracy, a lie. The third way, that's the truth. What actually happened? And again, it's the easiest scenario. How was this event? What's the easiest way that event actually occurred? That's the third way psyop. It's not the mainstream narrative, and it's not the conspiracy narrative. Because remember, they only want you to have one of two options to believe in. We live in a world of duality. Republican, Democrat, male, female, all that stuff. We only get two options. That's the cultural, religious, and societal wet blankets. They force us into these bottlenecks where you have one of two truths. You're either with us or against us. Remember, we've heard this type of stuff. That's not what we do here in the Mind War. We look for the third way. What's the easiest way that event actually occurred? How would you recreate the event if you had to? Would it be through the mainstream narrative? Would it be through the conspiracy narrative? Or would it be a third way? That's what we do here. We try to find the third way, the truth. Now, whatever the truth means to you, again, based on your perceptions, your observable perceptions of the life that you've lived. Hold on to it. Appreciate it. Do not let your observations be so concrete that you cannot change your mind later on as new facts and new information comes in. But in just a moment, we're going to return and continue on with my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician, and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back, folks. So we are going to pick up where we left off on my magical journey over at Instagram at The Occult Technician. You're going to scroll all the way down to a post titled Snow Moon from February 5th, 2023. So what you're going to see there is the white version of the triangle that I built in front of me here. And the way that I laid out my altar on this night was I put a white cloth over the cabinet that I work and do my work from, that I kind of sit in front of it as a cabinet that my grandpa Victor built. That's why I incorporate it into my work. It has meaning to me. It's special to me, right? So I laid a white cloth over top of it, and then I placed the white triangle. There is a candle at each of the three corners of the white triangle. And then in the center, I set the black mirror. Not facing me, but I set it flat on the surface as if it were sort of a hole or a portal downwards. So on this night, we'll read a little bit from what I wrote here in my journal. It says, working backwards from the night, right? So we're going to work from the end of my ritual backwards. And it says this, it says, danced through the living room, giving thanks to the demon Amy for all the guidance. So towards the end of my rituals, once things come to conclusions, I usually kind of dance around a little bit, shake it off a little bit, because it's very intense what you're going to go through. If you do this properly, these rituals, these ceremonies are extremely intense. And towards the end, as things start to calm down, as the psilocybin and THC starts to wear off, you start to come out of your somnambulance, you start to wake up out of it. It's good to kind of shake it off. It feels really good. It's usually a very euphoric and uplifting state of mind that I'm left in after these rituals. So I like to dance it off. I got a little energy. We're going to burn that energy off, right? I said, Leo is safe. That felt good. I stood in front of the sigil and absorbed its energies. The last song at the altar felt like the first connection to Grandpa Harry. It felt electric. I was hyperventilating, and I asked him for help. So who is Grandpa Harry? I guess we have to go there first. So my mother, her father, his name was Harry, okay? And I believe it was just Harry, not even Harold, right? So I never met Harry because he died when my mother was 7 years old. Now, this was devastating for her, and I think obviously played a huge role in her life in shaping who she became. Losing your father at such a young, tender age of 7 had to just be awful for her and all of her siblings. She had so many brothers and sisters, right? Now, as a child, I was told a story of how Grandpa Harry died. And what I was told is that he went hunting one day. He was an avid hunter, and he raised beagles. And so the story I was told is that he took his favorite hunting dog with him. He had the loaded shotgun in the back of the truck or the back of the car. And at some point during his hunting trip, the dog knocked over the gun, knocked over the shotgun, and shot Grandpa Harry in the chest, and that's how he died. Now, as a child, that's a believable story. Now, again, I left home for the Marine Corps at 19, still a child, still believing that that's how Grandpa Harry died. When I came home 20 years later as an adult, I started to hear different stories. And one of the stories that I heard, which I believe this is pretty much consensus, is that Grandpa Harry may have been caught having an affair with the wife of the local sheriff. That's not good. And the local sheriff took him out. Again, when we talked about earlier in this episode, when you look at conspiracies, when you look at events that occurred, what's the most realistic, what's the easiest way that event could have occurred? You have one way, a dog hit a gun in the back seat, and it happened to just go off and shoot Grandpa Harry in the chest and kill him. It's kind of tough to believe. The other scenario, Grandpa Harry getting caught having an affair with the sheriff's wife, and the sheriff not responding properly and killing him, that seems a little more realistic. I was pretty shocked when I heard that. Again, it was kind of like learning that Santa Claus isn't real, right? All of a sudden, all sorts of different, strings start getting pulled. well, wait a minute, if Santa's not real, then neither is the Easter Bunny, and then wait a minute, what about Jesus and all that? Oh, all the dominoes start to fall. The same type of thing. Once I heard that story, I go, wait a minute, what else in our family isn't true, right? What else in our family maybe are we hearing things differently? So I wrote here towards the end of my journal entry, it says a week ago, so I was visiting with my parents at this time, and it says, a week ago, Mom said she saw Harry in my face, and then she ran upstairs, and I think she was crying. So a week before this ritual, my mom said she looked at me and said, wow, I see Harry in your face. You look like my father. And she ran upstairs and she was crying. Now, I've never heard her say that before. That was very interesting. Now, again, because I've never met Grandpa Harry, I kind of call him my dark passenger. I don't know much about him. I know my father. I know my mother. I know my other grandparents. I know Victor very well, my grandpa Victor. I spent so many days with him. He was such a good man. But sometimes I wonder about some of my own characteristics that didn't come from Victor or Alta, or Neda. But maybe they came from Harry. And now I can't imagine what it must be like to be someone who has lost their parent at an early age where they never really got to meet him. This idea of this person that created you and you don't know anything about them, that has to be so difficult. So this night during my ritual, sitting in front of this white triangle with the black mirror laid flat in front of me, here's what I was doing. Again, low dose, THC, psilocybin. Took the enhancements. Listened to the Gateway Experience tape. Got myself into the state of somnambulance, that state of hypnosis. Sat down in front of the altar with the black mirror, the triangle, the candles there in front of me. Had my headphones on with the hypnotic music. Doing the Kundalini. Doing the breath work. And now, staring into the black mirror. This, in your state of somnambulance, is when you are going to start your work, when you're going to ask questions, when you are going to try to make connections. And that's exactly what I did that night. I made my first connection with Grandpa Harry. Now, here's what it felt like. So when you look at that picture with the triangle and you see the black mirror there, again, as a hole or a portal, although the mirror itself is a two-dimensional flat object, basically, when you are on mushrooms, you have a different perception of the world around you. And what it felt like is when I was looking into the black mirror, I could see and feel the abyss below it. Because inside the black mirror, when you look in those black mirrors, what we know of as the abyss, that's in the mirror. That's the other side of the mirror. Again, that Stranger Things, when you go into the upside down world, whatever you want to call it, that's what's inside that black mirror. An infinitely large space of darkness, the void, okay? So as you're sitting there, it's like you can reach your hand into the black mirror and feel around. You can see in all directions the darkness. It feels massive. You have this feeling, this perception that within the black mirror in front of you, there is an infinite universe inside of it that you could just crawl into. And we're going to get deeper into that and how we work in that world in future episodes. But today, in this specific, this night, Again, I was focused on Grandpa Harry and calling to him. And sure enough, there he was. Not in the form of a human. I didn't see his human face appear or anything like that. But what it felt like is underneath that black mirror, I saw a constellation of stars. Tiny little points of light flickering. And they were all connected with basically like electricity, all connecting these points of stars together like a constellation. When you see a constellation drawn out, right? You see the signs of the Leo, the Aquarius, you see the signs where the stars are connected together with lines and now something appears. That's what it was underneath. He was a constellation. Just inside of the black mirror, I felt like I could reach down and grab them. And the feeling that I got from him, the message that I got from him is, whoa, why am I here? What's going on? Who brought me here? Why am I here right now in this form? And I said to Grandpa Harry, I said, I'm your grandson. My name is Victor. You know me. I know you. And I need your help, Grandpa Harry. Because at this point, February 5th, 2023, I was still fucking mad as hell. My emotions were still stirred. Anger building up. It felt good. Again, I wasn't releasing those emotions through physical harm. I wasn't stifling those emotions through alcohol and drug abuse. I was allowing myself to feel them. I harnessed that anger, the hatred that was inside of me. And I asked Grandpa Harry, in a very desperate way, I called out to him and I said, I need your help, Harry. And he said, what can I do for you? I said, Harry, here's the story I was told about your death. That some sheriff shot you. And he has never been brought to justice. I said, as far as I know, the sheriff and his family are out. They just went on and lived their life like nothing happened. And they're still out there today. I said, Harry, I need you to go after them. I asked him to drain the energy and wealth from the family of the sheriff that killed him. And use that passion and lust that he felt while fucking the sheriff's wife and the fear of facing the shotgun barrel. I need you to direct that energy and wealth to me. I said, Harry, I need you to go after the people that hurt you and extract from them their wealth, extract from them their energies, and give it back to me. This is what we're talking about with magic, dark arts, whatever you want to call it. When you're asking for something, this is how you ask. You find your most recent ancestor, not some ancestor from some other tribe, your recent ancestor. And you resolve, recent conflicts in your family's history. You extract the energy and the wealth and all of those things from your family's enemies, not the enemies of some fairy tale. The reason that this ritual was so important is that I believe it led to what went on in my recent past. I believe that some of the work that I did here has played a major role in the recent transformation. And we will talk about that and how that transformation occurred in future episodes. Okay? Because as we go through this, as we go through my work on Instagram, you're going to see this was the beginning. This was that ceremony that led to massive transformation later on in my life. And one last note that I want to make as we go through some of these other pictures is the card that I pulled, the tarot card that I pulled that night, was the Queen of Rings. Queen, you have feminine, and the ring. When we get to the future episode where we talk about the outcomes of this ritual, a ring plays a major role in it. Just like Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. What I found is that the ring in question here had so much power in it because so many people wanted it that their true nature was shown. Just like in Lord of the Rings, when that creepy little guy, Gollum or whatever, he was all weird and all that stuff and shrunk down because his desire for the ring was so much. He was addicted to the ring. He allowed himself to become this twisted creature. And I saw that in real life. The people who wanted the ring, their masks fell off. Their fake outer selves that they presented to me and the rest of the family and the rest of the world, it melted away. And their greed showed itself. And that story is wild, folks. But that's a story we're going to share for another day. You can finish looking through the pictures here. Another typical night. But this night, February 5th, 2023, was a massive ritual for me that resulted in some major transformations in my life. And that's how it happened. And we're going to close out today's very important episode. I think this was very important. We're going to close it out with this. One of the things that I learned through my mother's death was this. No matter how many people or things, animals, plants, whatever it may be, no matter how many other people in our lives pass away. So someone in your life dies. You see their physical body deteriorate, and then it's turned to ash, and now they are dead. No matter how many times that happens in your life, no matter how many times you've had near-death experiences, no matter how many times you have had out-of-body experiences like myself through the Gateway Experience tapes, which what we do in the Gateway Experience tapes, when you hear the description of near-death experiences, they are 100% equal. We are consciously and purposely having near-death experiences while we listen to the tapes. No matter how many times you do that, you still have never died. You still do not know the truth of death. And one of the things that I realized today is that you and I, we do not know if death is real. We've never experienced it for ourselves. That's an experience you only get once. Let me say that again. No matter how close to death you have gotten, you don't know if it's real or not, and neither do I, because we've never died. And now I know there is no fear here in the mind war, but folks, I fear not being able to die. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.